Welcome to the Internet Archive. Thank you for coming tonight. How many people, this is the first time you've ever been here? Woo! Welcome. So, okay, we're a digital library, kind of cool. And if you crane your necks and look back, those are actually about 10 petabytes of data spinning on servers serving the world. And you can tell that it's serving the world because it actually has a unique thing in all of the supercomputers I've ever designed is the lights actually mean something. So every time a light blinks is somebody either uploading something or downloading something from the Internet Archive. So actually there are a lot of users even right now as we speak. And if you saw the little clay figurines on the side, those are us. They're kind of a riff on the terracotta soldiers, where if you work for the archive for 3 years, then we make a little statue. And I don't know, some people think it's a little creepy. I think it's kind of cool to be cast in clay and added to the collection for the people that are working on civic good in the tech sphere. And welcome tonight tonight on Bitcoin and Banking on Bitcoin movie that we're going to be showing, and also a short panel. The Internet Archive has been involved with Bitcoin since 2011. A bunch of the early Bitcoiners said, hey, if you'll publicly accept Bitcoins as donation, we'll donate to you. And so in 2011, we set up and people donated Bitcoins to us, which we then sold, so we got 2,700 Bitcoins donated then. Don't remind me. That was worth about $2,700 at that time, and so we sold those. But the next year and thereafter, we've been basically holding onto our Bitcoins and paying our employees optionally in Bitcoin and our vendors in Bitcoin. The sushi place next to us took Bitcoins. Green Apple Books takes Bitcoins. And we made a little ATM machine so people would change it back and forth. And it's all around worked for us. At the end of last year, there was a posting on Reddit from the Pineapple Fund. And whoever Pine is, an anonymous person, did this post on Reddit, said, I'm going to give away $87 million worth of Bitcoins. Does anybody have any ideas of where it should go? It was like, and the question was, is this guy for real? And so if you click through, there's this website, and it had basically the first $1 million went to EFF and these other awesome charities, and had the little transaction IDs. And so you could actually see that, yes, there was $87 million worth of Bitcoins, and they were sort of draining down as Pine was donating. And Pine was the #1 by far donor to the Internet Archive during our last end of the year drive at $1 million. So hooray for Pine, whoever you are. So that was kind of interesting, and actually good news in the Bitcoin community. The transaction fees have actually come back down. I actually did a transaction last night, and it only cost 11 cents. It was 5 satoshis a byte. So it's sort of back to the old days where Bitcoin could work as a transaction system. We also started a credit union, the Internet Credit Union, just basically during the recession to try to build a bank that didn't suck. And the regulators really didn't like this idea very much, and they basically crammed us down as to what it is we can offer. So I went to the board of the credit union and said, what do we do? And they said, well, why don't you make an internet credit union, in the sense that why don't you try to serve the internet community? And this is just as the Bitcoin companies were starting to have their accounts canceled because they started to actually get enough prominence that they were noticed. This is, I don't know, 2013 or something like that. And so we got okay from the regulators to go and open a couple of accounts, safe Bitcoin companies. So we didn't transact in Bitcoins. It was just to be their corporate accounts. And where they said it was okay 1 month, a few months later, they said, oh, that's really not okay. You basically have to go away. And they crushed our credit union into bits, which was really not a lot of fun. But the head of the credit union, Jordan Modell, who's actually knows everybody, every single person in the Bitcoin movie that's coming up. He actually met all of them, because this is pretty much the New York side of the Bitcoin community. So it's interesting that, still the United States and San Francisco and New York is a major player in sort of these new and different things. And I'm not sure where the whole Bitcoin thing is going. It sort of morphs around towards, is it a stock market? Is it a currency? Is it a transaction? We don't know, but I think of these new technologies as kind of a Rorschach test. You learn about people by going and showing them some new technology, and if they turn in fright, then that maybe indicates more about them than other people that you show something and they say, wow, it could be this. And I love to see the dreamers, where the technology always tends to fall short in some way or another, but the dreams stay the same, and we should then build the next technology to live up to that dream. So tonight we're going to have a short panel run by Wendy Hanamura, who will introduce our panelists, and then we're going to show the Bitcoin Banking on Bitcoin movie, which I think is a really fabulous overview of the whole Bitcoin phenomenon and some of the personalities that has shaped it as it's gone along. So please, Wendy Hanamura.
Thanks, Brewster. Let's hear it for Brewster Kahle. He's the founder and digital librarian of the Internet Archive. If we could have our guests take the stage. One little note, when Brewster first decided that we should take Bitcoin in 2011, we didn't really know what to do, so he reached out to a guy named Vitalik. Vitalik is now this billionaire founder of Ethereum, but Vitalik set up our first Bitcoin wallet. That's how we got started. As he said, we are going to be showing this wonderful film, Banking on Bitcoin, but we thought we should answer a few questions, kind of set the scene before we watch this film. So you'll find that there are cards in your pews and pens, and if you have a question, please write it down, and you can send it to our handy question gatherers, and they'll bring them up to me throughout the next 30 minutes. I am Wendy Hanamura, and I'm very proud not only to be introducing this film by a wonderful director who gave us the right to show this to you free of charge tonight, but also our two guests. Jackie Linné, she's the Vice President of Product of First.io, and also Thomas Hunt. Thomas is the founder of the World Crypto Network, 600 videos on YouTube, all about everything from the latest price of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies to talk shows about cryptocurrencies. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So, I think everyone wants to know how you two got started in Bitcoin. Jackie, tell us 2014, what happened to you?
Well, in 2014, I was working as a design consultant, just wanting to work with startups, do some product design. I got connected with Purse.io, and I helped them design their mobile app and other things. So the way I got really started in Bitcoin is they said, well, we only pay in Bitcoin. So at the time I thought it was kind of crazy, but I went with it, and I've learned a lot since then.
So the scene is 2014, you get this hot new job, but here's the catch, your entire salary is going to be in Bitcoin.
Yes.
What did your family say?
My family thought I was nuts. They thought Bitcoin was a scam or a fraud. I mean, of course, they had heard these news stories. They didn't really take me seriously. It really wasn't until the last 6 months that when I said, yeah, I work in Bitcoin, people say, oh, okay. Before then, it was just complete confusion.
Thomas, how about you? You've been in Bitcoin from about 2013. How did you get started?
Well, when I started, I read about Bitcoin on Slashdot, and I didn't think it was going to work. I thought it was World of Warcraft money, and it seemed obvious that the early adopters were going to be ridiculously rich, and I didn't think anyone would stand for that. So I ignored it for a few years, like most people do after they hear about Bitcoin. And then in 2013, it broke through $250 a coin. And I was like, wow, I really missed out. I thought 10 was too much, 20, 30, and then 250. So after that, I decided to get all in, and I started making YouTube videos about it just because I wanted to talk about it every day. And it seemed like a very scientific and mathematical concept that was really hard to understand. And I wanted to bring some humor to it and try to make it more relatable for people.
Well, Thomas, it's been a crazy 6 months, as Jackie alluded to, in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency world. Can you kind of catch us up, sum up what's going on right now?
Well, even just today or yesterday, Craig Wright, allegedly Satoshi Nakamoto, was sued in court and now has to prove whether or not he or perhaps his friend Dave Kleinman were really the inventors of Bitcoin. And that's just hot off the presses in the last 24 hours. We also had Circle by Poloniex, one of the big exchanges, merged with another kind of exchange, and they're talking about the next Wall Street of crypto. And the price went up $700 last night. signs. So it's like this every 24 hours in Bitcoin. There's always something happening.
Now, there was a moment in December when one Bitcoin was about the same price as an economy car in this country. Where are we today with the price?
Well, I just checked on my watch, and it's $10,200. So we're doing all right.
So, Jackie, you obviously didn't ever spend any of your salary for the last 4 years and just saved all of it.
Ooh, I wish. I mean, I saved as much as I possibly could, but of course I sold a lot of it to pay my rent and other bills. But of course, back then when I first started getting paid in Bitcoin, it was valued at maybe $150, $200, something like that. So yeah, I've been along for this crazy ride.
Let's say I have some Bitcoin, which I do because the Internet Archive gave us our bonuses in 2014. We each got $80 in Bitcoin. What could I do with it on Purse.io?
Well, at Purse.io, you could buy anything on Amazon with Bitcoin. And we actually would connect you with someone that has an Amazon gift card. Those folks are often willing to give away some of the value so that they can get Bitcoin in exchange. So you could go on Purse.io, search for the new iPhone X, select a discount of 20% off, and in about a week, you'd probably get your order fulfilled.
And this is because there are many people around the world who are paid in Amazon gift cards.
Yes, and this was news to me when I first started working at Purse. Turns out there's a whole economy built on Amazon gift cards.
And so in order to make those gift cards liquid, they need to buy something with them and get something back, in this case, Bitcoin.
Yeah, a lot of people want to get their hands on Bitcoin in any way they can. And for some people, especially if you all know about Mechanical Turk, people who are doing a lot of manual work that get paid in Amazon gift cards. If they're living in a country like India where it's not so easy to get something shipped to your home, they are looking for a way to liquidate that value.
So that leads us to the question. There is a lot of speculation going on in cryptocurrencies, but before that, there were real reasons why people would want this kind of currency and still do. Can you talk to that use of crypto?
Well, if you look at the dollar is an inflationary instrument. So that means they're constantly printing new dollars, both physical and digital dollars. If you look since 1920, the dollar's actually lost 80% of its value. So it's been slow inflation in the United States, but in a place like Venezuela, you could get paid on Friday and have less money on Monday. That's why when people in Venezuela get paid on Friday, they go out and buy toilet paper, whiskey, other tradable goods that actually hold value. So instead of holding your money in whiskey or toilet paper, which are very good and tradable commodities, you could hold it in Bitcoin instead, which is a lot easier to trade internationally.
I think you mentioned to me once that it was what happened in Turkey that made you really pay attention to Bitcoin.
Sure, it was Cyprus in 2013. Cyprus had a lot of foreign money that was in their banks, and they thought, hey, we could get our hands on that money. So they locked down their banks, and their ATMs would only let you withdraw $100 a day. And it's at this point that people realize the difference between Bitcoin and money in a bank. When you have money in a bank, the FBI or anyone can call up, and they could say, freeze that money. And it's not actually frozen. There's no ice involved. It's just a term of art that means freeze that money. And with Bitcoin, your money can never be frozen. You can always send it around. So when that happened, Bitcoin spiked to 250, and presumably a lot of the people in Cyprus got turned on to Bitcoin and started getting in. That's what we've seen also in Venezuela with their inflation problems following the death of Chavez. They've really turned to Bitcoin, and some are even mining Bitcoin to try to live off it.
So we have a question from the audience. Can the government, our government, stop the rise of cryptocurrencies?
No. I mean, they're going to try, and they have tried, but due to the nature of Bitcoin, the technology, it's distributed across computers all over the world. So there's no one central place to go and shut down machines. Folks in Venezuela and India, US, Madagascar are running Bitcoin nodes, and it's impossible to shut all of those down.
Yeah, the only point the government can legislate Bitcoin is when you trade it for fiat. So they could stop you from trading to a bank. They could make the banks never touch Bitcoin. But if you go out on the street and find someone willing to trade you money for Bitcoin, it's just like blue jeans in Soviet Russia. They can try to stop the trading all they want, but it keeps going on because people want blue jeans.
We said that we would ask the most basic and answer the most basic questions. The question that you might be too embarrassed to ask in, say, a San Francisco Bitcoin meetup where there's lots of aficionados. Let me ask you this. If you were advising your mother who wanted to start getting into cryptocurrencies, what would you tell her?
Well, the most important thing for me is to tell people to do dollar cost averaging. So if you go to a place like Coinbase, you could buy $100 a month or $10 a week. You can put it on a schedule, and this way you get some of the high buys, some of the lows, and some of the mids, and it works out into an average. The other thing I'm suggesting these days, even though I don't really like the altcoins, they just keep going up in value. So if you take a mutual fund approach, maybe take $1,000, put $100 in each one of the top 10 altcoins, and look back in a year, it might be worth more. So spread the money around and invest over time.
Yeah, and if you're really just trying to get started with owning Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin, Ethereum, I recommend Coinbase. Their user experience is really simple. Even my mom can do it. You just sign up for an account, provide your information, connect your bank account, and within a few days, you can purchase some amount of Bitcoin, some fraction of a Bitcoin.
Now, you had some advice for your own mother, did you not?
Yeah, it was really funny. In December, right when the hype was, I don't know, there's a lot going on, I get this text from my mother. I have $5,000. Will you help me invest in Bitcoin? The first thing I said is, no, here's the Wikipedia article, here's a book, learn about the technology before you put $5,000 into it. But just in general, I mean, you have to think about investing in cryptocurrencies as an investment with risk. Sure, a lot of people have made money on Bitcoin, but we don't really know what's going to happen. So don't put any money into Bitcoin that you can't afford to lose.
Sound advice, sound advice. So you go onto Coinbase, you get your account. Eventually, let's say you have quite a sizable array of cryptocurrencies. What's the next piece of infrastructure you recommend?
Well, if you have any significant investment, you have the choice of holding your private keys on the exchange where Coinbase is in charge of your security, or holding your private keys yourself. And I would suggest buying a hardware wallet like a Trezor or a Ledger. It's a little USB box and it does all the math off the internet. So your keys would never be on the internet so no one could steal them. Once you have something like that, you could transfer your funds over, then store the backup key in a safe deposit box, and now you've essentially made your own bank, which is what you need to do if you really want to use Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is adult money, and you have to be responsible. If you screw up and send it to the wrong address, it's gone. You can't call American Express tech support. There's no one there. It's completely gone. And the same thing if you get hacked. If you don't have a good password, if you don't have two-factor authentication, this really complicated service that you don't want to use but you're going to be forced to use, someone could come and take it. And once it's gone, Coinbase can't do anything. There's no insurance. It's completely gone.
So here's another question from the audience. I read that Steve Wozniak lost 6 Bitcoins to someone using a fraudulent credit card. Have you heard that story, and can that be prevented?
I've heard it. I don't know the details. I think it's very sad. Steve Wozniak's a hero of the computer community, and it's sad to see him lose his money. But in the same way, 50 Cent allegedly sold his album for $700 million in Bitcoin, today's market, and he's saying he doesn't have any of it. So it could be a lot worse than just the 7 Bitcoins. But it depends how Wozniak was storing his funds.
There are famous stories out there. They might be apocryphal, but people who lose billions of dollars because...
Well, it doesn't start out as billions of dollars.
Right.
It starts out as you left your computer on in 2013 and it made a bunch of money, and then maybe you threw that computer into a landfill and now it's gone, and all that money's on the hard drive, and you know it's in your Dell 7600 that's at the bottom of the pile. And if we could only dig through that landfill, and that's actually a true story. In England, a guy lost a hard drive full of Bitcoin, and every year when the price goes up, he says, why won't someone give me a bunch of money to buy this landfill and dig it up? And as the value, if the value keeps climbing, keeps going up, eventually someone's going to do just that. They're going to buy that landfill and dig it up. It'll be worth it.
Well, Jackie, you have managed your own personal finances in Bitcoin since 2014. What steps do you take?
So my system is I'm paid in Bitcoin through my employer. It's taxed just like U.S. dollars. And basically the day that I get paid, I usually sell half of it right away because I got to pay my mortgage and my bills and all of that, and who knows what's going to happen with the value. So usually I get paid, I sell half of it, and then with the other half, I try to save as much as I reasonably can. And then, on the marketplace, there's kind of the advanced version of Coinbase is called GDAX, and they have this trading interface where you can actually set up limit orders to say, I really don't want to sell this Bitcoin until it hits 20K again. So I can set up that order and just kind of sit and wait around and hope that it hits eventually. So with my long-term storage, I have a hardware wallet, or actually multiple hardware wallets. It's just like a little USB drive. I really love the Ledger brand because they're really easy to use. So I have my savings on my Ledger, and I have that in a fireproof safe, and have backups at my mom's house, and feel pretty secure that way.
An interesting note recently, I heard that your freezer is also a fireproof safe. So if you were going to keep some documents or something in the freezer, that would work too.
Okay.
It's a good tip. You're not thinking of that.
On our street, Clement Street, I could go down to Green Apple Books and buy books in Bitcoin. I used to be able to buy sushi next door in Bitcoin. What if I just want to do my daily life in Bitcoin? What should I do then?
Well, you could do it, but if you don't rebuy the Bitcoin, you could be in a lot of pain later. At one point, I spent $65 worth of drinks at a hacker conference, and then the next week, Bitcoin doubled. So I actually spent twice as much on those drinks. Whereas if I spent the $65, then went home, went to Coinbase, rebought the Bitcoin, no one does this, but if you actually did that, you'd still have your investment, and you could just use Bitcoin as a spending vehicle.
Yeah, there are a lot of places, especially here in San Francisco, where you can spend Bitcoin. There's even a bar downtown called Stookies Modern. It's this really cool, 1920s era bar, and they accept Bitcoin. They were the first bar to accept Bitcoin. So pretty much anytime I see a business that's accepting Bitcoin, I try to spend Bitcoin there. But then I've also heard of people who are really trying to only spend Bitcoin for their day-to-day, and so they'll buy gift cards with Bitcoin. We see a lot of people buying gift cards with Bitcoin on Purse so that they can then go to Safeway, buy their groceries, go to Whole Foods, wherever they need to spend their funds.
So you're really suggesting two different approaches to Bitcoin. Thomas, you're talking about Bitcoin as an investment. I don't go buying drinks with Apple stock, right? You're saying if I spend my Apple stock on drinks, I better go buy more Apple stock because it is my investment vehicle.
And in San Francisco, you'd have to find someone to take the stock for the drinks, but it wouldn't be that hard.
And Jackie, you're saying that more and more Bitcoin can be the coin of the realm, just like dollars or francs or yen.
Yes, it's a cryptocurrency, and it was designed to be used as a currency. And I think the more people who use it as a currency, the more popular it will become and the more stable it will become. So as a Bitcoin supporter, I feel like I ought to spend it as much as possible.
So now we have not only Bitcoin, of course, there's Ethereum, there's Bitcoin Cash, there's Dogecoin, there's Filecoin, dozens and dozens and dozens of cryptocurrencies. Help us think about this in a cogent way. Is it like lira and yen and dollars?
Well, that's definitely what they want you to think. They get you to go to CoinMarketCap, and they get you all excited about the lower cap stocks you can invest in. But for me, Bitcoin is like the United States, and the other currencies are like Puerto Rico. And they're great, and they've got a shot, right? One of them might make it to the top, like Rocky, he's a contender. But Bitcoin is just up there all the time, winning every day. And if you look at the technology, we had this scaling debate, and the Bitcoin people wanted to use a more advanced technology. It was take longer, be more difficult. But Bitcoin's like an airplane that's flying around the world constantly, refueling mid-air, never landing. So whatever you do to the airplane, if you add a little extra weight to it, you could really mess it up. And the guys who are in charge, they don't want any extra weight on Bitcoin. And this frustrated a lot of other people who said, hey, just put some extra weight on there, it'll be fine. And they said, no, it'll affect all these other things, butterfly effect. And when you have people like that in charge, you can build a really strong project like Bitcoin.
Some good questions coming in from the audience. Here's one from an environmental perspective. While many companies in Silicon Valley and around the world are trying to help the planet by saving energy, it seems that cryptocurrencies are doing the opposite. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
Because I'm also concerned about the environmental impact that Bitcoin mining has on the world. But then you think about the traditional banking system, you think about the physical branches, you think about the armed security guards that are driving trucks around all day. I mean, there's a lot of invisible cost to the environment that's already baked into our existing financial system. That being said, I am really interested in some of the other currencies which are experimenting with alternate ways to mine the currency which don't have an impact on the environment. So I think there really will be a competition between cryptocurrencies to be like the most useful and the most sustainable currency long term.
There are a lot of questions coming in worrying about our own government. What happens if the government tightens controls on the internet or doesn't allow or shuts down crypto sites? Without access to crypto sites, does that effectively shut down crypto trading?
Not really. I mean, they're working on decentralized exchanges right now where you could trade Bitcoin for another altcoin or for other Bitcoin without a centralized third party. So technology is rising to beat that, and it would be the same thing like anything else with the internet. Did they really get rid of the MP3? Did they really stop piracy? They try to tamp these things down, but then they only spread the word about them more. One of the biggest events in Bitcoin was when Senator Chuck Schumer gave a speech about the Silk Road, and he, of course, was screaming about how bad it was that you could buy any drug you wanted on the internet, and suddenly these people had the freedom to choose what they put in their bodies. The next day, the Silk Road went through the roof. They had to get more servers. So if the government wants to crack down on Bitcoin like we've seen China and Russia try, they're really only telling people, this is what you need to look into. This is the future. This is what we can't control.
We hear that institutional money is coming to invest in crypto. To what degree is this true, and how might this unfold?
Well, no one knows right now, but there are rumors on the internet that several of the large banks, like the Bank of Japan, are quietly acquiring cryptocurrency. And if you look at the track record of Bitcoin as a successful currency, it's pretty obvious that the banks would want to buy some. Unfortunately, they're not going to be as early as some of the early Bitcoin adopters, so they're going to have to pay a lot more to get their Bitcoin. So they might try to depress the price of Bitcoin with a lot of negative articles. And then when you're selling, they're buying.
Yeah, I go to any Bitcoin meetup and you'll be bound to run into a representative from Bank of America or Western Union or some other bank because they're dying to learn more about how they can use blockchain.
And these are the same people saying that Bitcoin was stupid 3 years ago. They were like, that's a Ponzi scheme and it's tulips and it's a bubble. And then even now, the same thing. Paul Krugman says it's no better than a fax machine. They say it's tulips and a bubble. They're running out of excuses, so that's why they're starting to buy.
More and more you see groups like Blockchains for Social Good. Here's a question in that vein. How can cryptocurrency help with the wealth gap, especially in regards to women of the world?
So I've read about girls that are trying to work in Afghanistan as coders. They're learning software engineering. They're working as coders. But the problem for them is that as women, they're not allowed to have a bank account under their name. They have to ask their father, their brother, their uncle to open the bank account for them. So these girls are now being paid in Bitcoin, and they're essentially able to be their own bank. They don't need their local bank and local regulations to keep them from earning and saving and investing. I think that's pretty cool.
I would also bring up the concept of universal basic income. A lot of jobs are going to be digitized away. Car drivers, truck drivers, cashiers are pretty much done in the next 5 years. And we're going to have to pay those people to not break the robots. And that's what Kurt Vonnegut talked about in his book, Player Piano, how mobs of people would just go around breaking the robots unless you paid them to stay at home and watch TV. And with something like Bitcoin, we could automate those payments, so you wouldn't need a bank or anything, and then it could just automatically pay people. And as long as you stay home and watch TV or maybe even virtual reality, you'd get paid, and you just stay out of trouble. And that's what we need people to do.
Now, we know that you're working hard, Thomas, but you make videos about Bitcoin, and you put them up on YouTube. Can you make a living? Can you sustain yourself doing this?
A little bit. Not if you live in San Francisco. If you live in San Francisco, it's not going to work. You're going to have to leave the city. But after you leave the city, you can do all right through donations, Patreon, YouTube advertising, maybe some podcast advertising. One of the things that attracted me to Bitcoin early and why I started doing YouTube shows is I realized I could put up a QR code at the end of my show, and anyone anywhere in the world could scan that code and send me $10. And I thought, wow, there's a lot of people in the world. Maybe they'll all send me $10. This could work out really well. So I figured I'd give that a try.
Indeed. If you find Thomas's knowledge, that he gives to you freely on YouTube, to be of value, all you have to do is scan this code and send him a sliver of a Bitcoin.
And of course, because this is Bitcoin, you can also scan the code and see how much have already been donated. So, it's all there. It's an open ledger. You can see all the transactions. It's really neat.
Jackie, did you want to add to that?
Yeah. I recently learned about this project. It actually came up in a hackathon for Ethereum token projects. They're a bunch of folks from Syria, and they really saw the need for identity document storage, basically, for folks that are fleeing Syria and trying to make a new life in another country. So this project aims to use blockchain technology, of course, not really used as a currency, but blockchain technology to keep track of those documents, be able to own their identity regardless of where they are in the world.
Well, if this discussion left you scratching your head, we invite you to watch this documentary, and hopefully all of these pieces will fall into place for you. But I want to leave you with one last question. Perhaps this question came in before you answered it, but perhaps this is what's really in the thought bubbles over people's heads. Is Bitcoin cryptocurrency really the future? And should I get as much of it as I can no matter what?
Yes.
Come on, Jackie. Pretend this is your mother asking this.
I believe that cryptocurrency is not going away. I believe that cryptocurrency is the future. Whether Bitcoin is going to be the dominant currency going forward, who really knows? It could be Ethereum, it could be Bitcoin Cash, it could be some other currency that we haven't even heard of, that hasn't been invented yet. So like I said before, invest wisely, but definitely invest in cryptocurrency in general.
And you would recommend to do your research, wouldn't you, that there are so many proliferating cryptocurrencies, some backed with very little.
There are, but there's also this idea with the internet. When it started out, they had this little protocol called TCP/IP, and everyone said it couldn't scale, and it couldn't do email, and it couldn't do attachments, and it couldn't do streaming video, and it couldn't do live video, and all these things, and TCP/IP kept bending, but it never broke. and it kept bending and it never broke, and now it does everything, and we're still using TCP/IP. So what Bitcoin is like being able to go back and buy a little piece of TCP/IP, and whenever anyone uses it, you get paid. So I would do that if I could.
Well, Thomas Hunt, Jackie Linné, thank you very much for answering everyone's questions. Let's give it up for these two.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Don't forget,